Hello and welcome back. This is a video that I'm actually very excited to share because the Regent was my favorite character on launch. It still probably is my favorite character, or at least top 2 Regent and Ironclad. But there was quite a few things that I didn't fully understand about the Regent, so I couldn't share a video this in-depth for a while. But somehow in the last week or two, I just kind of figured it out. I'm on a winning rampage right now, so here's where we're at. This is spoilers. These will be posted as videos, so if you don't want to see spoilers for what's coming, skip ahead. But I'm on an 8 win streak right now, and it doesn't feel like I can lose. Like, everyone feels very easy. And I've even had quite a bit of bad luck, and it just didn't matter. Like, one of the worst starts I've ever had to a run, I ended up one-shotting all of the bosses. That almost happened 2 or 3 times in a row, actually. I had really bad luck in these runs, and we're still crushing it. So this is one run. This was multiplayer just for fun. 2 runs in a row, 3 runs in a row, 4 in a row, 5 in a row, 6 in a row. This was a run that my wife did. This will also be posted as a video probably like 2 or 3 weeks from now. But she wanted me to critique her run and just give her feedback on how she can improve. I'm doing this for other players too. So we will be doing posts of like run reviews in the future. But that's just, she's playing on Ascension 3. That's why that run is there. 7 in a row, and then 8 in a row with a Regent. And before that, I was playing like Necrobinder, trying to figure that character out. So the rest of the Regent runs, I did like 3 A10 runs on like the launch of the game, and then I lost one sometime like 3 weeks ago. So we're winning 92% right now. I expect it to be much higher within, as I do more Regent runs, but I really wanted to get this video out and just share where we're at. So very excited about what's going on. And I'll update you, I guess you'll just see the videos that I post of how the run goes. Because I think 99% win rate is possible. Like I said, I just feel indestructible every time I play the Regent now that I figured out this character. So I think the biggest reason why that is this character is both the best at minimizing RNG throughout the run, but it's also the most capable of just one-shotting bosses. And it can build tools during fights as well. It has like card generation. So if your deck is missing some kind of win condition, you can generate it in the fight. If your deck is like a little bit unstable, you can remove cards from your deck to minimize, drawing all your strikes. You can get rid of them ahead of time. You can one-shot bosses, so your scaling is unbelievable. And then honestly, it's just fun to play. Like, it looks cool and stuff, so that I think adds to the win rate because it's just easier to play a character you enjoy. It's enjoyable and it's very good. So I think this character might be one of the strongest. I mean, I don't know how much better you get than 99% win rate, but we'll see where the win streak takes me in the next couple weeks. So we have a quick outline for the video because there's a lot to talk about. So just so you know what's coming up. First, we're going to talk about what changes at A10. Or by that, I just mean like high ascension in general. Then we'll talk about how to one-shot a boss with a Regent because this character has some very intricate builds that I think are worth talking about. And I haven't seen anyone like fully go in depth in them. And I think it's one of the best assets that the character has. So we'll talk about that in general. And then we'll go more specific in Stardust. Radiate one-shots, drill one-shots, a couple more other things. Then I want to talk about the math behind Forge. I think this is the one thing that I didn't understand before, but like doing the math helped me out. So show a lot of graphs and charts for that. And then we'll end with cards to look for. This is probably the biggest section, but it's only one title because it's the most straightforward. But let's just get into it. And if you want to see example runs, like more tangible stuff, I shared before I'm on a win streak, so these are going to be posts from the win streak that I'm sharing quite soon. And I'll keep posting as I keep winning all the runs. And I'll post losses too, but I just haven't had many yet. So if they show up, you might see a loss or two, just so you can get a sense of how the character actually dies. If you saw my other video, this will be repeat, but what changes at A10 is that basically you get the accumulation of all the other ascensions. And Ascension 9 is really where like the difficulty spikes, where like small damage becomes unavoidable. And it might not look like a lot, enemies going from like 11 damage to 13, but that basically 11 damage is like 1 above on average how much you can expect to block on that turn. So you're taking kind of 1 unavoidable damage. Making that 3 damage, it's not just like a 10% damage increase. It's like a 3 times increase in the unavoidable damage that enemies are doing. And so this puts a lot of pressure on you as a player to end runs quickly, because if you're taking 3 times as much unavoidable chip damage, that starts to accumulate very quickly, or it places extreme taxes on your block assets. And so basically on A10, if you stumble at all, you're going to have a longer fight. If you have a longer fight, that unavoidable damage accumulates, and that's how you end up dying. And so Ascension 9 is really where that difficulty spikes. I say A10 because it's just like the hardest difficulty. It has all of that difficulty accumulation. But basically what you need to be doing at Ascension 10 is addressing what problems your deck needs to solve right now. It's not like you're not like drafting some ideal deck or some build or some archetype out there. You're solving problems every single step of the run. And so it doesn't matter just what you draft, but it also matters the order you draft the cards into. And so this is a graph I like to share a lot. On lower Ascension, you can get away with having like a dip in strength. Like you can get a little bit less strong to prepare for your scaling up to the final boss. On A10, you basically want an always increasing or never decreasing strength curve, essentially. And so that means you can only draft cards that are immediately good for your deck, for the most part. So if you, on A10, speculate on a sword stage before you have any like sword payoffs, and take it thinking it'll be good later, you'll probably die before you're able to capitalize on the payoff that this card might offer. And so on Ascension 10, we need to draft in a way where we can take benefits now, and that seamlessly lets us transition into scaling later. So like taking a Bulwark, it's just a good card. It happens to give you a sword. Then you can take Refined Blade. It's a fine card, but if you already have a sword, it can get a little bit better. And then you can take Summon Forth. And then, you know, at that time, every one of these had been like block improvement, damage improvement, and consistency. Then Sword Sage is this huge strength boost because you already have the card set up to take it. So you can't just kind of speculate on random cards in your ideal build. You need to take cards that are solving things you need every single step of the way. But if you do it smartly, and we'll talk about what cards are good to take early that help you stay open to transition into, you know, these different pathways towards high-level builds that can one-shot bosses and stuff like that. But before we get too far into the video, I want to take a quick aside to give you some specific tips for the Regent. The first one is just that the Regent is really, really good at building towards an outcome. There's just so much in the kit that is good at building towards an outcome, and that outcome can be crafting a late game plan. You can like shrink your deck to go for infinites. You can set up combos to do like a ton of damage to the bosses. Whatever outcome you want, the Regent's really good at making that happen. And so I think just planning and being good at the game is very much rewarded on the Regent because you can kind of make your deck do whatever you want it to do. You have so much good deck manipulation. Begone at common is ridiculous. Charge is one of the best cards on any character ever. Like you take 2 strikes and you turn them into 0-cost exhaust cards. So it's in your deck. So you can hit stuff before it even gets into your hand. You're like preemptively fixing your draws. Charge is busted. Guards is not preemptive, but you can basically just exhaust any cards you want from your hand because you can get your deck very small and replace them with block cards. So you have tons of time to set up. Tyranny, for some reason, just lets you exhaust one every single turn and it lets you draw more. So Tyranny on its own can just sculpt your deck. So this kit is so good at setting up a deck. You can get around curses or like bad cards in your deck. The starter cards aren't that big of a deal because you're just so good at manipulating your deck. And then it also has this huge kit towards planning ahead, like Convergence, retain your hand. This will put something on top, this will put something on top, this will put something on top. So if you draw something before you're ready for it, you can kind of save it for next turn. You have cards like Glow. I actually like the new version of Glow. So this is the old version that drew 2 cards. The new version draws 1 card now and 1 card later. I almost like that better because it can let you say, well, my next turn is going to be even better. And it lets you even out your draws. So you just have a lot to work with every turn. And then Foregone Conclusion, if you're like building towards a combo, this can be just 1 card that says, you get your combo next turn. So all of these together just means the Regent, whatever you're trying to do, his velocity, his ability to execute that plan is so high. And that's what makes this character excellent. And a double-edged sword for beginning players, because if you don't know what you're doing, then it's really hard to capitalize on this, because if you don't have a good plan, you're just going to do stuff at random and that's going to cause problems. So the best advice I would have is have a plan with this character, and then you can make use of this kit. So just kind of, in the run, just think about, what am I doing? What is my goal? How am I winning the fight? And when you can plan all of your actions around that plan, it gets so much better. So in general, the Regent, I think, because of all this, can handle slightly messier decks than many of the other characters, so it can survive a few speculative picks. So what I said is true about, like, you can't just take dead draws early on, but you there's a little bit more wiggle room in that with this character than I think any other character, which is kind of cool. Setting up combos is much easier, and I think having a higher ceiling on this character is more important than having a higher floor, because if you can eventually get your deck into the state where the higher ceiling can execute, you can still one-shot a boss. So getting those cards that can make you strong is kind of more important. Basically, like, buying something great at the shop is way more important than like removing a strike, because the Regent's just good at handling the strike. Yeah, removes are less needed. They're still good. Like, if you have nothing else, like, they're gonna help your deck more, but the Regent can work around a little bit of a messiness a lot better than any other character, which I also think just helps it succeed, because you don't need this like streamlined deck. It's really nice to have one, but you don't need it. And I think that distinction is important. So now let's talk about my favorite part about this character, how to delete bosses, because he's so good at it. Unfortunately or fortunately, the S tier way to delete bosses is just playing a bunch of good cards. Like, you don't necessarily need a good damage plan if you just have solid cards. If you play enough bulwarks and charges, eventually the boss will just die. So the best plan in general for the Regent is just have a lot of good cards. The like mid-range star strategy is excellent. So don't feel like you always have to be deleting bosses. It's more of a plan B or plan A instead of plan S. But I just want to make sure you know this is like, you don't have to always do this. However, this character is very good at deleting bosses. So if you can get energy relics, Helix Drill, you can one-shot bosses pretty easily, actually. Energy relics or a specific setup of cards. So this card is quite binary. It's quite hard to build into it with no relic support. But if you have relic support, you can just turn one kill a lot of things, which is a lot of fun. Similarly, Radiate and Stardust, you could just delete the boss so easily. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about how to set that up. And then B tier, the sword builds, like, you can delete the boss with swords. We'll talk about why planning like your main damage sources swords probably isn't the best plan. It's an excellent supplementary game plan, though. We'll talk about that later. But the first thing is, like, you don't always need a combo. Random good cards just works. So, you know, take a Comet, take a Bulwark, hit them for like 30 with the sword, 30 with Comet. That's a lot of damage. So don't worry too much about going infinite, but it's important to know that you can, because it can get you out of a lot of messy situations. And I've yet to encounter a character that can just destroy the bosses like the Regent can. It's also just really fun. I think the purpose of a game is having fun. So multi-hits, we're going to go in depth on all of this, because this is like the way the character kills bosses. You get a multi-hit card, you get some amount of strength scaling. So this is kind of like chips and molt in Balatro. Like, the hits are the chips and the strength scaling is the molt. And finding that sweet spot of how many times do I hit them for how much is how you build this character. And a lot of these multi-hits are based on stars, so you're going to need some amount of star gen to support the multi-hit card. So here's a plot. This is basically, like I said, Balatro, chips, and molt. It's a contour plot of how many times you hit the enemy and for how much you are hitting the enemy. And these are contour lines of what the highest HP Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 bosses are. And you'll notice there's actually like 17 times 17 and 23 times 23 aren't that far away in terms of like absolute numbers. So it's much easier to one-shot the Act 2 and Act 3 boss than it is to one-shot the Act 1 boss, because you just have way more time to prepare. And this is only off by like a factor of 2, essentially. So this could be like without vulnerable, and this could be like with vulnerable and a relic or an enchantment or something. So really, one-shotting is a plan you want for like Act 2 and Act 3. You're going to need something else to come up with beating the Act 1 boss, though, most of the time. But in general, mentally, if you can hit 23 times for 23 damage, you can like kind of zone that in as this will one-shot a boss, or 20 times for 20 damage to one-shot the Act 2 boss. that can tell you like if you're in the ballpark of being able to delete the boss. And so here's a graph of where the actual cards lie on this axis, and you'll notice Radiate on its own requires 171 hits. This is a contour line of the Act 3 boss's HP, by the way. To beat the Act 3 boss with just Radiate, you would need 171 star in one turn. That's not happening. The upgrade adds 1 damage, huge improvement. Stardust Plus hits for like 7, so it requires a lot less star, but 74 hits is still quite a bit. But you start getting into more reasonable territory when you get like Vigor Plus involved, or like 3 times Vigor Plus. But the reason I'm showing this graph is basically you cannot one-shot bosses without strength scaling. It's virtually impossible to generate 171 stars. It's not that hard to like play 3 Vigor and 19 star. So when I first started going for this, I vastly underestimated how important the strength scaling is. It matters a lot, and that's the takeaway here. So strength scaling, these 3 are like the S tier best possible options. Feeding Frenzy in particular is like top of the top of the top. This comes from an Act 1 event, and you need to spend like 200 gold on the event. So it's hard to plan for this. But if you take event, like if you just know this shows up in the Feeding Frenzy event every, I think, 4th or 5th option. So if you're taking events in Act 1 with 200 or more gold, you can kind of play towards Feeding Frenzy. It's a pretty good event anyways, but getting this in Act 1 can set you up so much with this character. So I actually like holding a lot of gold and taking events in Act 1 just in case this comes up. Because this makes one-shotting like trivial essentially. there are ways around it though. You don't need it. But yeah, if you like get an early Radiate, I would really start trying to look for this card. Monologue's quite good. When you upgrade it, it gains Retain, so it doesn't really take up a deck slot. But then you can easily play like 6 cards in a turn, so this can kind of become 0 energy, gain 6 strength as well. So that's why it's there. Terraforming is kind of the OG. Upgraded, it gains 8 vigor. It's the most like robust. It doesn't require any setup. Like you just get it. It does damage. Bop. Great card. Arsenal is cool. When you upgrade it, it gains an 8, so you can start growing strength from the beginning of the fight. It does kind of require like this inter-archetype mix where you have to be like creating cards and doing other things. But the nice thing is the Regent has a lot of creation cards that are good. Like if you just play Arsenal into guards, you could gain 7 strength in 1 turn. So, and it's permanent, so you don't have to time it with the attacks. So Arsenal, it's only A tier because it's more situational, but I think objectively it's a like more generally good card. But specifically in like I'm trying to one-shot the boss, it's a little bit sketchier. And then B tier, Powder's quite good. I mean, 3 Vigor's not bad. Prep time, you can just wait a couple turns and then you'll just delete the boss. So if you're really stuck, you can start generating colorless cards to try and find this. And then Resonance is fine. Really good in multiplayer. Less good in single player. If you can upgrade it, it's decent. And you have a lot of star. I think it's 2 strength on the upgrade. So it's fine. But this one really wants an upgrade, whereas the rest of these don't need it necessarily. Worth mentioning, there's a lot of relics that can just help the build out. So taking elites is especially important for this character because getting these relics can make the builds so much easier. Akabeko gives you 8 vigor. That can just completely remove the need for taking like a terraforming. And then you have space for other things. Or you can go Akabeko plus terraforming and your damage is solved. And then you just need like 8 star and you win. This dude gives you strength every time you spend star, so kind of passive scaling. It's rare, it doesn't come up often. One of the easiest ones is Lizard Trinket with Potion Belt. It gives you 3 strength. If you just use like this in a flex potion, that's 8 strength, like for free. If you use 2 potions, 3 potions, you can just use that in place of anything else. Guria and Sword of Jade, 3 strength each, both excellent options. A tier, these all just add 1 strength. I would never turn them down, they make it easier, but they're not a huge improvement. And then B tier, Toasty Mittens. I've yet to make this work, but I'm sure there is a build out there that does Toasty Mittens plus Radiate. Because you can set up the top card of your deck often on the Regent, so you can use Toasty Mittens to like shrink your deck. But you would need a lot of cards that help you set up the top card of your deck, so that you don't accidentally like exhaust your key cards. But there is a way to make this work. I'm just not smart enough yet to make it work, but I'm sure we'll do it in a video sometime. I think I'm not memeing. I think like genuinely it could be good. It just requires a lot of experience in the game and careful planning that I'm not ready for yet. Enchantments can also make this much easier because with multi-hit, these basically just add flat damage. Obviously, only worth taking these after you have your multi-hit payoff card, but this one just adds a flat 2 damage, and you can get it in any act. This one is probably the best. This adds 8 damage the first time you play the card, and you get it in Act 2 specifically. So this is the best one to have on your multi-hit card. Well, either this one or Corrupted. Corrupted just doubles the damage. So if you're doing like Vulnerable especially, or like you have a Vigor, Corrupted can just let you go absolutely bananas. And you can get this in Act 2 or 3. So taking events in Act 2 specifically, if you have a Radiate, can be really good at making it more possible to just one-shot stuff, because these two are so good. And this one is totally fine as well. Like taking Radiate from 3 to 5 or upgraded 4 to 6 damage is also significant. Every damage matters so much. You can also just use the Ancient that doubles damage. Acceptable as well. Good in place of Corrupted. In terms of star generation, these are all in the S tier bracket. Royal Gamble, probably the best one because it gives you 9 star for 0. Yeah, if you even like see one Radiate, just start taking Royal Gambles because that's going to be the most reliable way to scale. Genesis is also really good. Not so much for Radiate, but for Stardust, because that just gives you a ton of cumulative star, and you could just like build a giant star engine. Hidden Cache gives you 5 star for 1 energy if it's upgraded, and 4 of which is the next turn. So you can play like 2 Hidden Caches, prepare for next turn. It's excellent. And then the Sealed Throne is absurd. Whenever you play a card gain star, this this can also just solve builds. Like you can just play 10 cards, gain 10 star. It's awesome. Glow is A tier when it's upgraded. It's also quite good on its own, but it gives you 2 star, draw 1 card now, 1 card later. It just helps your deck flow, and it gives you star. So it's hard to have too many of these. Shining Strike also gives you 2 star and goes on top. So you can get into some cool lines where you go like Shining Strike into Glow into Shining Strike to generate 6 star for 3 energy. That can be really helpful with Radiate. One thing I want to mention is Knockout Blow. This has the most number of stars on it, but it doesn't work on almost every boss because you have to kill something to get the star. So I think this is a fine card to play early, like it's just a good role player damage card, but I don't think you can really count on this as a star generator for like one-shot builds because, you know, you can't knockout blow the Doormaker and then use that star to kill it. So it's a fine card, but not in the star generation one-shotting bosses build. Then if you want to get into easy mode, Decisions basically takes good decks and makes them absolutely unstoppable. This card is so unreasonable when it comes to one-shotting bosses. And the cool thing is the floor on this card is really not that bad. It's 0 energy, 6 star, but you get to draw 3 cards, play a skill 3 times, and there's a lot of good skill, like triple bulwark off this. There's so many good fair things to do with this that I don't mind speculating on it early. But if you happen to then go into this build, Decisions helps so much. And similarly with Foregone Conclusion, if you're trying to assemble all of these things to converge on one turn, what better card than basically choose 2, when this upgrades you get to choose 3 cards and just add them to your hand. Very good for making these combos work. So we've talked about the math, talked about what to plan for. This is just some examples of like reasonable Act 3 one-shotting the Doormaker with the most health boss setups. Very straightforward. You play Decisions, play Royal Gamble 3 times, play 1 Terraforming, and then you play Stardust on a vulnerable enemy. That does 607 damage. That's it. It takes 4 cards and a vulnerable, and you can one-shot the Doormaker. That's remarkable. Or you could play Decisions into Decisions, which will let you basically copy 3 cards. You just copy Terraforming 3 times, you copy Royal Gamble 3 times, and then a single, like if none of these cards are upgraded, this still does 567 damage. No upgrades, no vulnerable, no relics, nothing. This is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards. One shot the most health boss in the game. And you can do it with commons and uncommons too. You're going to need some relics and other things. Like this looks like kind of a mess, but it's actually not that hard to assemble for the character. You basically just go like Hidden Cache into Convergence. That'll give you 6-star the following turn. And then you can go like Glow, Venerate, Royal Gamble, like a patter. And then if you have Akabako, Sword of Jade into Radiate with Vulnerable, that will also one-shot the boss. There's so many different working pieces that you can slot in for any of these. Lots of relics. If you have, instead of patter, you have terraforming, it gets much easier. If you have any enchantments on the Radiate, it gets much easier. If you have another Royal Gamble, it gets much easier or more hidden cash. But basically, I'm just trying to share like a pile of random like energy cards and then some vigor or like strength boosting cards. You can kill bosses pretty easily with this character. So once you get the Radiate or once you get some of these cards, you can start looking for the Radiate. It's just a matter of time until you can make the math work in your favor. Next, we'll talk about Heavenly Drill. This one is way more straightforward, actually. It basically deals 10 damage X times, double X if it's 4 or more. So here's a graph. These lines are contour plots of basically how much damage, anything like above them, will one-shot the requisite boss. So this is the Act 1 boss. Anything above here will one-shot it Act 2 and Act 3. I'm still surprised at how much health the highest Act 2 boss has relative to Act 3. Maybe these will get stronger at some point. But if you look at this graph, it's actually not that bad. It's like, once you get up to 8 energy, you know, you're only being asked to do like 30 some damage per hit to one-shot a boss. That's not that much to ask, right? This does 10. If you make them vulnerable, you only have to add 10 damage to this to one-shot a boss. So a pretty straightforward plan here is like Heavenly Drill with like Terraforming, Patter Plus, and Avadra, and a vulnerable enemy does 528. That's enough to one-shot the Doormaker. So there's a lot of like versatility in this build. Yeah, I love the drill. So really with the drill, you kind of need two things. Energy is one. Anything above 4-star goes bananas. So Convergence is probably the most reliable generator because you can play Convergence and just hold the drill in your hand, prepare for next turn. Hegemony can help. Alignment can help. Like, you can basically just go Convergence, Refined Blade, hold. You're going to get 2 extra, so you go up to 5. Alignment puts you up to 7. You play Big Bang. That's 8 energy. And then you just play, like, Terraforming Patter, and you kill them. Or if you have any potions, or, like, there's so many different ways to make this do more damage that you can really... Heavenly Drill is a very workable card to one-shot bosses with. If you get Ice Cream with it, it's over. Like, that's the easiest build in the world. You just skip, like, 2 turns and then delete the boss. Happy Flower, you can kind of coordinate when this is going to give you star to make it easier. And then Luminous, also this has retained. So if you're doing the Convergence Refined Blade thing, having 1 Luminous makes it even easier. So for me, the drill, I think the relics in particular make it much easier. Like a Candelabra or any energy generation relic that's not a turn 1 energy generation relic, because you can't one-shot the Doormaker on like its turn 0 essentially. I think the non-turn 1 energy relics are really good with this card. Turn 1 is really good for the rest of the run though, so you can do both and it's fine. Next, let's talk about Forge. This was something that was the most confusing to me. So I'm gonna explain what I did here. I ran a Monte Carlo simulation over, this is the old Spoils of Battle. The new one like forges 5 and draws 2, but I used this because it felt like the quintessential Forge example card. And basically what I did is I looked at how many times or how many of these you have in your deck, and you play them when they show up. And then how many times you play the sword over the course of a fight. So this is like you play the sword 1 time. This is 2, 3, and 4. So obviously playing the sword more is going to do more damage. And then this is a graph of the damage dealt per energy spent as a function of all of these parameters. So basically, like, if you have 9 Forge cards in a 20 card deck, like 50% of them are Spoils of Battle, you're just always playing Spoils of Battle, you're going to converge to some value. And then if you play the sword twice, it's going to be higher and higher and higher. Basically, for me, I just wanted to answer the question, like, do I put all the damage on the sword and wait and play 1 big attack? Or like, how many times should I be playing the sword? And that kind of thing. And so here's a graph of the, like, kind of convergent damage per energy as a function of how many damage per energy cards you have and stuff like that. You can see it kind of, let's go through kind of what makes sense. If you're playing the sword 1 time, if you play a bunch of 1 energy, do 10 damage cards, this is 10 damage per energy. The sword on its base rate is 5 damage per energy because it does 10 damage for 2 energy. And so you can see if you're playing the sword one time, you'd have to play like 9 or 10 buffs to get this to the point where your average damage per energy is 10. If you play the sword 2 times, then you've added 10 damage. You spent energy on this. The sword does 20, and then you play the sword to do 20 and then 20. So your buff is kind of getting double counted, and so then you get to benefit from the buff. And that's why this line jumps up. That's why if you look over here, the damage per energy is higher because you've played the sword twice now. So even though the sword is more expensive, playing it more than one time, you get to double count your buffs, and so that makes it be overall more efficient. And then 3 plays again, slightly more efficient, 4 plays slightly more efficient. But you can see it's kind of tapering off. Like the first one is around 10, it only goes up to about 17 playing the sword 4 times. So here's a plot of how many forge cards you need in your deck to basically reach 80% of the gain you get from having no forges to a deck that's completely full of forge cards. Because you can see forge cards in deck, it never really stops like improving your damage per energy, but it definitely tapers off at some point. And it tapers off pretty hard. Like 2 forge cards in the deck, you're getting almost all the benefit compared to if you had like 10 forge cards in the deck. Like it's not that much more efficient to play those. And then you have, in real life you have like variance issues and stuff like that. So basically this is saying, based on how many times you're expecting to play the sword in a fight, for me I think 4 sword plays is sort of the upper limit of what I can expect to play a sword. You don't want more than like 20% of your deck to be forge cards. And this is a very simplified simulation, but I'm just trying to get a sense of like the more times you play the sword, the more forge cards you could put in your deck to get benefits from. But on average, I would say like maybe 10 to 15% of the deck at most should be forge cards. So if you have a 20 card deck, that's like 3 cards. Beyond that, you get very diminishing returns on your investment. So anyway, what I took away from that simulation is that forge maxing isn't optimal. 2 to 4 good forge cards is kind of the most efficient way to do damage with a sword. Don't go overboard, just play like 2 bulwark and a smith, or like the smith summoned forth and a bulwark. You don't need that much more than that because you're better off spending your energy on the sword in that case rather than more buff cards. Just as a kind of visual example of this, like if you play 2 smiths into a sovereign blade, that's actually less damage than just playing 1 the smith and then playing the sovereign blade 2 times. So you don't need that many forge cards to make this good. You're just better off playing the sword more times, is kind of what I'm saying. Okay, so now that we've covered more of the specific builds for the Regent and what you're building towards, we can cover what cards to look for, and you can get a picture of how these cards can transition into those builds. So these are good. When I say scalable commons, I mean these are commons you can take early. They help you out right away, but then their effects translate nicely into late game scaling. Either it's damage scaling if you're trying to one-shot a boss, block scaling, or something like that. They're doing things the character wants to be doing later on. It's pretty good to take them early. In my opinion, the 2 S tier commons that I'm basically taking from floor 1 all the way till the end of the run are Begone and Go. These just Begone shrinks your deck, draws cards. It just gets you through your deck very quickly. It does damage. It's excellent. Glow's basically the same thing. It draws you cards. It gives you star. It's just excellent. I actually like the nerfed version more than the draw 2 cards version because I like being able to set up my draws for later. It just makes it so you're never like bricked on draws, right? 6 cards now and 6 cards later, in my opinion, is better than 7 cards now when I've spent an energy to draw and then 5 cards later. At least in my opinion. 18 are just cards I'm pretty happy with taking early, like Celestial Might. This is a nice backup for the multi-hit strategies, like if you have Vigor into Celestial Might early. That's a lot of damage for Act 1, even Act 2. And this card doesn't really fall off. It's also a card that you can put enchantments on quite nicely, and you're like not too mad about it. It's very good with Patter, so like this is a really good early game play. You block for 8, gain 2 Vigor. This does 24 damage for 2. And if you can upgrade it, it ends up being 32 damage for 2. And if you upgrade the Patter, it ends up being 36 damage for 2 energy. Like that's, for Act 1 and Act 2, that's not bad. And it's multi-hit, so it can deal with the cockroaches or the cicadas, whatever they are. Hidden Cache, the way I think of this is it's kind of like a bloodletting, but for this character. Like you're just getting star. and Star is kind of like energy. So this feels like a card that would be dead, but half the cards on this character or more care about Star generation. So taking this early, it's not ideal on like floor 1, but floor 3 you can kind of just take it, and it just opens up so many more picks for you in the future. And it can help a little bit with the starting deck, like you just play this instead of a Venerate. Collision Course, it's been buffed since this one. It does 11 damage now, and it upgrades to do 15 damage for 0. It's hard for a 0 cost card to fall off, and it creates a debris, so there's like a bunch of card creation rewards, so having a couple of these in your deck is never really a bad thing. Both of these, they can be pretty good. I said A-, they're like a little bit worse than these, but if you have upgrades to spare, Solar Strike gives you 2 star. So kind of in a pinch, if you don't see any glows or hidden caches, you can take this to get some star generation. It's not ideal, but it can work, and it does decent damage early. And then Refined Blade also is like energy generation, so you can plan for future turns. It basically costs 0 over the course of 2 turns, and it just gives you damage scaling. So I'm pretty happy to take this one, actually. Next, we get to generically good commons. These are cards that don't have any specific builds that they're like moving into or like synergies that you're working towards, but they're just really good. I'm just happy to take them. S tier, I would put Know Thy Place, Photon Cut, and Glitter Scream. Know Thy Place, so underrated. 0 energy, 1 weak, 1 vulnerable. This prevents damage. This helps you do damage. We talked a lot about some of the one-shot builds, how much of an impact vulnerable has for those builds. So just one Know Thy Place can let you stack weak and vulnerable without disrupting your vigor. It exhausts if you don't want it. You can upgrade it if you want reliable access to weak and vulnerable, which usually you do. And this character can draw a lot of cards, so doing this all for 0 energy is fantastic. Photon Cut, again, lets you plan ahead. 10 damage, draw a card for 1 is great. It upgrades to do like 13 damage and draw 2 cards, so this is one of the best upgrades on the character ever. It's like a super pommel strike. This card's fantastic. Glitter Stream is just really solid block. It doesn't look remarkable, but this has saved me from so many fights. Like, what is this? 15 block for 2 is not bad. And the upgrade's good. It goes well with like Fresnel Lens or Dexterity Gain. Love this card. Next, we get to the cards that I'm saying are A tier. The only reason these are in A tier, not S tier, is the star requirements mean you can't like hoard them. Like you got to be a little bit careful because you can get into situations where if you first pick Guiding Star, second pick Astral Pulse, you can get into a situation where like half the cards in your deck aren't playable in a longer fight. So the effects on these are obviously much better. And if you've taken some of the cards we talked about, where are they? Like Hidden Cache and Glow and Solar Strike. That's why these cards are really good, because then they let you scale into taking Guiding Strike and Astral Pulse. You don't need that much star to make these cards work, and these are really good. Like I'm never mad to have a bunch of Guiding Stars in my deck because draw 2 cards is an excellent rate. And it upgrades to draw 3 cards, which is honestly remarkable. Cosmic Indifference, it's pretty good. Like this is another card that's good at like setting up later plays. I prefer Photon Cut in general, or like there's a couple others that I like better, but sometimes you just need this to help with a little bit more consistency in your deck, and it's totally fine in that case. Crush Under on the first like 5 floors, I would say is S tier because there's so many multi-enemy combats that this solves. The upgrade is actually kind of nice. It just makes enemies lose 2 strength this turn, which is really good against the eels, and it's good in a lot of Act 1 bosses. Like if you're fighting the kin, this can basically be a piercing whale because they do like 3x3. It'll turn 9 damage into 1x3, right? It'll be -6 from all enemies. It's pretty good into the centipedes for a similar reason, so I don't mind taking this card, at least one of it. It does fall off a little bit in Act 2, but I think it's good enough in Act 1 that it's totally fine taking. And it's not dead in Act 2, because dropping the enemy strength is really good in a couple fights. Okay, on to the uncommons. These are, I think, the bread and butter of this character are uncommons. There's so many good ones. All of these I'm counting as S tier, like I just take them. Charge is probably the best. Like if you just take Charge, it's so good. It does a ton of damage. It gets all the bad cards out of your deck before you even have to draw them, and it doesn't exhaust. So you can just keep doing that. You play Charge like 3 times, you've got 6 cards out of your deck. If you have a 20 card deck, you've like shrunk it in half. That's insane. Convergence gives you star. It basically costs 0 energy because it gives you energy next turn, and it lets you retain your hand. So it's really, really good for setting up any kind of combos, but also just if you know the enemy's going to attack next turn, you can set up block, or you can set up like you can block this turn and then set up to play a bunch of attacks the following turn. Just one of the best cards ever. And then Radiate is S tier because it's like the easiest card to kill bosses with I've ever seen. Yeah, this is S tier. These two, you just take them and you'll win. I know this technically requires building around, but on its own, like you have Venerate and your starting star, like this can just do like 9 damage to all enemies for 0 is also very acceptable. And then so the floor is not bad and the ceiling is exceptional. So it's totally fine just to take this on floor 1 and be happy about it. Manifest Authority is kind of A tier. If you can upgrade it, I would probably put it in like A+, like slightly below these, but it's really good upgraded. Because it's good in the card creation archetype, but it's also, you're getting colorless cards in your deck, and colorless cards are really good for scaling. You might not know what you're scaling into, but they're just way stronger than the average card. And the way colorless cards work is they're just kind of generically good, so you're never too mad to have one in your deck. So this card's quite nice, especially if you can upgrade it. These two are B tier. Spectrum Shift. The problem with this one I have is that the upgrade doesn't give you upgraded colorless cards, but it makes it cost 1, and the unupgraded colorless cards are still fine. Like, if you've ever used a colorless potion, you can kind of understand why that might be good. And then Summon Forth. The sword build is just a little bit below rate from everything else, but this card's fine. Like, if you think about it, it kind of draws you a card because you're taking Sovereign Blade, which is something you would have to draw into, and it just sticks it into your hand. So this is kind of like do 8 damage, draw a card, if you think about that. Like, it's like an unupgraded Pommel Strike, but the ceiling is quite high because if Sovereign Blade has been forged a couple times, instead of like do 8 damage, this will be like effectively 3 energy, do 80 damage, draw a card. And that starts becoming pretty good. So the floor is kind of low, but this card can scale quite highly, so don't underrate it. But it's not the best thing the character can do by far. Alright, next, man. There are so many generically good uncommons on this character. It is unbelievable. You could basically win an entire run with like just these 4 cards in your deck. Bulwark is absurd. Like, in terms of people say like a forge build, like, or whatever, you can basically win a run just playing like a couple bulwarks and hit him with the sword. I think that's like what a forge build typically looks like. That's what I was saying when I said don't go too in on like forge. Like, you don't want to forge max, but if you just get passive forging from something like bulwark, which also just full blocks for you, it's fantastic. Go for that. Shining Strike is like the best star solve, especially if you get this early in Act 1, because this is actually pretty good damage. If you upgrade it, it does 11. You could just keep getting it back and back and back. So if you get this in Overgrowth, you just have a damage solve, because you're just doing 8 or 11 damage every single turn, and you're getting star. So then you can just play your Gamma Blast and your Reflex without having to worry about lining up your star and attack. So Shining Strike is so good. Gamma Blast, 2 weak, 2 vulnerable, 13 damage for 0 is absurd. Just take it. And then Reflect again, huge block. This is basically block for 17, deal 17, with upside, because if you block for more, this will do even more. So yeah, just be taking this. Black Hole and Particle Wall, both A tier. Particle Wall is much higher late game. Black Hole is much better early game. If you take an early Black Hole, this can just solve your multi-enemy combats. It's particularly good against the multiple eels fight because it does damage without triggering their block effect. So you can just play like Black Hole, and then you can go like Shining Strike one of them, hit all of them, Gamma Blast one of them, hit all of them, play Quasar, hit all of them, you know. Or you could just play Particle Wall a bunch of times and kill them. So it's pretty good. Also worth mentioning, Particle Wall, if you have Runic Pyramid, is just like a forever block solve. Like, you literally don't need any other block cards if you have Particle Wall with Runic Pyramid, or you can play enough copies of Convergence that you're just always retaining your hand. Then, like, you don't need anything else. This just does it. So, love this card. Quasar, again, this gives you an upgraded colorless card when it's upgraded, which is a significant improvement. So, this is another card, like, it just kind of solves whatever problem you need, because you get to choose the card to put into your hand. If you need block, you can get block. If you need like damage scaling within the fight, you can get damage scaling within the fight. It's kind of sick. And then these are all B tier. Prophesize reads like an absurd card. The problem is it's like too many cards to be worth two, and like it's just too many cards to deal with. So I actually generally prefer Glimmer to Prophesize because I normally only have like 4 cards worth of space in my hand at any time, and then Glimmer can let you save like your best card for later. Like if you don't need a block, you can play Glimmer, put Particle Wall back on top, and now you have like Particle Wall Glimmer is a block solve for 2 turns. And these are the kind of things that the character is just so good at, is like these little intricate interactions letting you just solve 1 turn or 2 turns with 1 turn's worth of cards is so good. This is what the character does. Devastate is just fine. If you need damage, it's good, but you're much better off using your star on other things. If you don't have other things, I would take it and play it because it is good damage. But like if you compare Devastate to Comet, which we'll get to later, or even Gamma Blast, it just feels kind of sad. Then these are rares that you can take early that will scale later. Heavenly Drill, Decisions. Talked quite a bit about these. They're both S tier because like one of these can just be your entire damage solve for the whole run. And that's amazing. A tier, Seeking Edge is kind of nice because it lets Sovereign Blade hit all enemies. So at the base rate, this is kind of like 3 energy, do 17 to all enemies. But then the upside is much higher if you play the sword again. Now you're doing like 27 to all enemies for 5. If you pair it with other forge cards, you can kind of one-shot a bunch of enemies. So it's fine. It's very good if you're trying to do sword stuff, but it's just kind of playable on its own too. Make It So is awesome. I didn't realize this comes back from literally anywhere. You exhaust it, it comes back. Discard pile, it comes back. Your deck, it comes back. It just is always there. So if you take this like if you have some skills, this is just going to add damage to all of your attacks. It gives you more card plays for things that care about how many cards you played in a turn. I love Make It So. It's very good. Really good to put enchantments on. Just any little bit of damage you can add to this really adds up over time. The Smith, it's just a solid card. One energy, 4-star, forge 30. Upgrade is forge 40. So if you get the upgrade, you can basically spend 3 energy to do 50 damage, and then the next turn it's going to be 2 energy, do 50, and it's quite efficient. These two are both B tier. Crash Landing's pretty good early on. Like you can just delete all of the Act 1 fights if you see this. It's pretty good in Act 2 as well. The drawback of filling hand with debris is real. So you can't really run this out too early in boss fights, but usually in elite combats or regular combats, this will just kind of get you through those. And then the thing is, this is a bunch of card creation triggers, which matter for some things we'll talk about later. But it can give you like 7 strength or like 28 block when you play this. And so taking this early, it does damage. Kind of bad against boss fights, but you can scale into a build with it later. Heirloom Hammer can copy the sword, but it can also copy any colorless cards you've made with like Quasar and stuff like that. And honestly, I think that's the better application besides copying the sword, because it's hard to play the sword too many times anyway, especially because this costs 2. So it's not great, but there definitely is a use for it. And also, man, look at how many generically good rares this character has. All these are S tier. Big Bang is just, it's adrenaline with upside, essentially. Bombardment is so busted. You just play it, you kill him. If you have Bombardment with Tyranny, you just get a damage solve for 1 energy. It's incredible. Comet is so good. I don't know how many, I may have never skipped a Comet in my life. This is probably the most generically good card on the character, because 33 damage, 3 weak, 3 vulnerable basically says your attack and block plans are almost solved. It just does everything. We talked about Foregone Conclusion. This is just really good at setting up combos, but you can also just use it to set up for the turn. If you know they're going to be attacking, you grab block. If they're going to be blocking, you grab attacks, that kind of thing. Guards, it just blocks, shrinks your deck. It's perfect. Void Form and Genesis just make playing your cards so smooth. I love them. Dying Star, it's A tier because it's so good against some of the Act 3 bosses. Like Test Subject, this basically says Test Subject does no damage. The Queen, this can stop the Queen. It can stop the multi-hit attack from the Queen's minion. And if you can play this reliably, this can just mean you take no damage from multi-hit attacks. Then you just have to worry about big attacks. Tyranny also just is like, If you have kind of a messy deck or a big deck, this just kind of solves that. You can just get all the strikes out of your deck pretty quickly. It smooths your draws. It's awesome. I'm invincible. It's really just a low opportunity cost card. Like, you're never happy about it, but there are so many cards on the character that say, like, put it on top of the deck, that it's pretty easy to set this up and just get 10 black for free. And then royalties, if I see it in like Act 1, I'm definitely taking it. Act 2, probably. I'm less likely to take it in Act 3 just because you don't have that much opportunity to get benefits from the gold. So, in total, this is the list of all the cards that I'm pretty happy to early pick. This isn't even all of the cards that I would early pick. There's a lot that are good in Act 1 that fall off. These are the cards that I'm happy to pick in Act 1 that I'm also happy to have in my deck Act 3. So they're good kind of throughout the entirety of the run, and there's so many of them. So this character definitely has a deep card pool. Really fun to play because there's so many different things you can be doing. These are the payoffs. So these are cards that I probably wouldn't take early, but once you have even a little bit of inkling that that's the direction you're heading, then you can go into these builds. And I would say, of all the characters, the Regent can speculate on these a lot more. So if you have like 1 or 2 creation cards, I would take a Pillar of Creation at that point. Child of the Stars, you could almost probably just take before, like, floor 1, because you can eventually get stars to pay for it, and the base deck has some. It's a little bit sketchy, but if you have like 2 star cards besides the starter one, you could take this and be fine. Royal Gamble probably requires the most setup because hitting 5-star is a little bit weird. Unless you can upgrade it and then it has retain, and it basically doesn't take up a deck slot then. So if you have a bunch of upgrades hanging around, you can upgrade this and just wait until you can set up your combos, and it's probably fine enough to do. These are all A tier. Like, you can't really take Sword Sage floor 1 because you don't start with Forge cards. I would only take this after I have like 2 Forge cards probably, which is pretty easy to do. Stardust as well. It's the problem with Stardust and why Radiate is acceptable and this isn't, is this cleans out your stars. So there is an opportunity cost there. So I wouldn't just take this before I have some amount of star generation where I can feel like, okay, this isn't gonna take all of my stars and the benefit is big enough where I can put this in my deck. Radiate doesn't take your stars. So even if it only does like 9 damage to everything, you still have your stars to spend energy on stuff. And then Arsenal is A tier because I wouldn't take it unless I have like 2 or more ways to generate cards. But then once you do, it gets quite good, and you can pair it with something like, what do we talk about? Crash Landing plus Arsenal is kind of good. It gives you like 7 or 8 strength with 1 card. And then B tier, 7 stars Conqueror. They're fine. Conqueror is kind of just like a much worse version of Sword Sage, because this, you have to like line it up at the right time. The Forge is almost 0, so that doesn't really matter. So if you're like, if you have a lot of sword stuff, maybe this is fine, but I'd rather just have Sword Sage or just not worry about it and play more sword cards. 7 stars, again, it's a decent stand-in for multi-hit cards, but if you compare this to Stardust, Stardust upgrades to do 7 damage. So this requires 7 stars to do 7 damage 7 times. This would require 7 stars to do 7 damage 7 times. So the upside isn't really there relative to some of the other options, but 7 stars specifically with Void Form is excellent because it's free. And then you can just do 49 damage for no reason, and that's quite good. So B tier because you need a lot to make it work, but if you can make it work, it's kind of good. These are cards that I kind of try to avoid. I'm not super happy to put these in my deck in Act 1. Especially Rotten, whatever, especially this one in Crescent Spear. These I don't mind if I get them on like the first 3 floors. Kingly Punch in particular, they upgraded it in a recent patch. It does like 12 damage for 1 on its own, which is fine. And it goes up to be like 18 damage the second time you draw it. So these are like totally acceptable early, but I probably wouldn't pick them after Act 1 ends. And I'm not really excited to have them in my deck after that point. But they're quite good early. So I'm not saying these are like bad cards. I'm not saying they're never picks. I'm just saying if you are offered other options from this list instead, you might have a better Act 2 and 3 if you take those options. So if your Act 1 is already strong, skip these for more cards from this list, and you'll have a better Act 2 and 3. But if you just need damage, take these, you won't be mad about it. And these are probably the only 4 cards I would say are bad on the character. Of these, Monarch's Gaze is the best. There is like a couple situations where you might play this. Multiplayer, obviously, it's great. In single player, like, you just need such a specific deck for this to work. It's so expensive. I don't know. And like Furnace, if you have no damage and you're going into an Act 2 boss, like I might take it because it does give you scaling, but it's kind of weird because this character doesn't need cards like Furnace because you have things like, where is it? Like Quasar, like so much random card generation, and you can just get your scaling that way. That it's just much better to do things like that instead of trying to rely on a Furnace to get you there. So anyway, that's my guide for the character. We'll keep posting videos, and I'll probably update you maybe in the description of this video or something, like where my win rate goes. But I think this character is amazing. I'm winning essentially every single run with it now. And it's just basically the couple things we talked about. You can one-shot bosses, you can stop variants from being much of a factor, and almost all of the cards are good. So hopefully this helped you. If you liked it, please consider subscribing. It helps me out a lot, and it lets me know you guys like these videos so I can keep making more of them. I'll see you next time.